Hello and welcome to another episode of Psychology Mythbusting. In today's video, we're going to dismiss the idea that stress is the primary cause of ulcers. Ulcers are formed when the defense of the lining of the stomach is inadequate and damage results. The stomach is unable to secrete sufficient mucus to protect against the strong acid essential for digestion. Peptic ulcers are sores in the lining of the small intestine. Gastric ulcers appear in the stomach, and duodenal ulcers appear in the duodenum, the top part of the small intestine that the stomach empties into. Prior to the 1980s, most physicians and laypersons were convinced that ulcers were caused primarily by stress. It was also believed that ulcers were exacerbated by spicy foods, excess stomach acid, smoking, and alcohol consumption. In reality, the cayenne pepper, which is a moderately hot chili pepper, actually strengthens the lining of the stomach. However, more than an ounce a day of alcohol, especially beer, cigarettes, fatty foods, fruit juices, colas, cocoa, coffee, chocolate, carbonated drinks, and strong tea have all been shown to increase stomach acid and can exacerbate existing ulcers, but do not cause ulcers in and of themselves. Unsurprisingly, Sigmund Freud once assumed that ulcers were caused by underlying psychological conflicts. Additionally, psychoanalyst Franz Alexander in 1950 suggested that ulcers are linked to infantile cravings to be fed and feelings of dependency. Today, we know otherwise thanks to research by Barry Marshall and Robin Warren, which revealed the existence of an infectious agent known as H. pylori, which was the root of the ulcer. However, even today, several decades after research has thoroughly debunked the idea that stress and poor eating and lifestyle choices were the primary culprit, these ideas still remain afloat. This may be due to the misapplication of the representative heuristic. Because stress makes our stomachs churn, it makes sense that stress can cause stomach issues such as ulcers. However, a cursory glance at some statistics can dissuade this idea entirely. 25 million Americans of all socioeconomic class suffer from the pain of ulcers in their lifetimes. A corporate executive has equal chances of developing ulcers as do those who live relatively stress-free lives. As mentioned before, an infectious agent known as Helicobacter H. pylori living in the lining of the stomach and intestine may be what is largely to blame for causing ulcers. Although only 10 to 15% of people found to harbor these bacteria also had ulcers, it was later discovered that by treating these bacteria with antibiotics, the recurrence of ulcers decreased dramatically by 93%. This was strong evidence that H. pylori was the cause behind ulcers. By 1997, 3 years after this convincing study was released publicly, however, 57% of Americans still believe that stress was the primary culprit for ulcers, and 17% still believe spicy foods were the main culprit. A CDC poll from '97. As usual, spread of misinformation is largely to thank for the prevalence of this myth. In the 2005 film, The Upside of Anger, one of the characters in the film develops an ulcer after her father abandons the family and her mother frustrates her ambitions to become a dancer. However, as mentioned earlier, because the majority of people infected with H. pylori don't develop ulcers, scientists realize that other influencers may also play a role. The medical community soon recognized that excessive use of anti-inflammatory medications like aspirin and ibuprofen can trigger ulcers by irritating the stomach lining. Additionally, science has not completely chalked off stress as a factor in contributing to ulcers, merely that it alone does not cause them. Studies have also shown that psychological stress is associated with higher rates of ulcers in human and non-human animals. Stress is linked to a poor response to ulcer treatment, and stressful events such as natural disasters and economic crises are associated with increases in ulcers. What can be said here is that stress may contribute to the development of ulcers in terms of the biopsychosocial perspective. This is the idea that most medical conditions depend on a complex interplay of genes, lifestyle, immunity, and everyday stressors. Stress may exert an indirect effect on ulcer formation by triggering such behaviors as alcohol use and lack of sleep, which makes ulcers more likely. So although the verdict remains to be seen on the precise role stress plays in ulcer formation, it can be safely said that it alone isn't the only or most important influence. Thank you for watching this episode of Psychology Mythbusting. Tune in next time where we will discuss the myth that happiness is determined mostly by external circumstances. Please like this video and subscribe for more content, and as always, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section. Ciao.